Hello, today we're going to talk about cutter safety. In the coming activities, we may need to use cutters. These cutters have very sharp blades. That's why it's very important that we practice safety when using them. Okay, the first tip is first make sure that your work area is clean. I'll take everything that's not needed. Okay, next you have to inspect your cutter. Make sure that everything's okay, that the locking mechanism is actually locking. There are different types of locking mechanisms. This one, you have to push a button for it to lock. Okay. For this one, it has a knob. So make sure it's locking before we start using it. Next, when you extend the blade, make sure your hand is clear from the end. And you just extend just the right amount, just the right length. Not too much, because when you extend it too much, it can bend and break easily. So just extend it a little, just enough for you to have a safe cutting procedure. The next, okay, before we start cutting, make sure that you're cutting on a sturdy surface. In my case, I have a cutting mat designed specifically for cutting. However, not everyone has a cutting mat, so maybe you can use some cardboard to line your table like that. Okay, I doubled it up. See, I doubled it up to make it thick. Okay, in my case, I have a cutting mat, so we'll just use that. For the next tip, for example, you're cutting along that line, make sure that you don't have body parts blocking this path. Why? Because sometimes when you cut, you may accidentally pass through the piece and go all the way here. If you have your arm blocking or your hands staying there and you accidentally go past through the piece, you might cut yourself. So that's dangerous. Next, when cutting straight lines, it's a good idea to have a ruler like that. Okay? Okay, so now I'm gonna start cutting. Now this is my cutter. I just extend it a little. Make sure it's clean. Make sure it's sharp. And there you go. Now I'm gonna put some steady pressure on the ruler. Okay, why is that so? Okay, before I start cutting, I'm gonna show you why it's needed. Because if I just hold it loosely and I start cutting, the ruler can move, destroying your piece and worse, injuring yourself. So it's important that you hold it tight. But again, make sure that your fingers are not over the cutting line. Okay, that's very important. Make sure that your fingers are not in the way of the cutter. So you have to move back. See, as you can see, I'm moving it way back to make sure that I don't cut myself. So again, this is the cutter. Extend it a little and make sure it's properly locked. Then I start cutting. I have to hold the cutter firmly, not too hard, not too soft, and just cut away like that. Just some steady pressure. Do it slowly. You don't have to rush. Okay. As you can see, it didn't fully cut. So what do I have to do? I have to cut it again. I have to score it one more time. Okay, there you go. Okay, the same thing goes for cardboard. Again, this is a little harder than the foam that I just cut. Again, when I'm cutting, I'm making sure that there's enough space here, there's enough allowance in case the blade slips, for example, like this, it goes all the way there. For example, if you're cutting, I'm sorry. For example, if you're cutting near your leg or near your hand or arm, you might cut yourself. So that's very important. You have some allowance here when you cut. Again, I'm now cutting cardboard from some scrap cardboard boxes. As you can see, it's not yet cut. Okay, I can show it to you. See, it's not yet cut all the way through. So I'll place my ruler again on the same line. Then cut again. Alright. So let's just cut a few more times. Okay, there you go. However, for example, well, this is not a safety tip, but more of a general technique. For example, I want to fold my cardboard along this line. I can just cut the surface lightly. Not all the way through, just a little. Just enough to score the top of the cardboard. See? I cut it very lightly. Then now I can bend it along that line. See? So it will make some nice angled edges. Okay, here's another tip. What if I have to cut a circle? Some people, well, when they're very good at cutting, they can start cutting circles, no problem. But for many people, especially those who have not used cutters regularly, you can start first by cutting some tangent lines. Okay? Again, you have to hold the piece very securely, otherwise it might move and injure yourself or destroy the piece or damage the piece. Okay? Maybe I'll just do a few cuts. Then now I create more tangent lines, or I cut more tangent lines. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Okay, it might not be perfect, but it's close. It still looks like a circle. Okay, and once you're good at cutting, maybe you can start cutting circles. But please be careful, okay? This is not easy. I've been cutting for many years. That's why I'm confident in doing it. Okay, didn't go all the way through, so I have to do it again. Again, I don't force myself to cut the piece all in one go. I do it slowly to make sure that I always have control of the cutter. So there's my circle. Now lastly, when you're done, don't forget to close the cutter again and lock it. Okay? When you're not using it, always close the blade. Even if you're just gonna leave it for a few minutes there to take a drink, you have to make sure that it's closed. Other tips. Since you're probably doing these at home, these activities at home, you have to make sure that there are no people around you who might disturb you while you're cutting. For example, you have a small brother or sister, or anyone, or maybe a pet, who might suddenly go beside you or behind you and injure himself or herself when you're cutting. So make sure that your area is clean and people around you know what you're doing so that they don't just jump on you while you're cutting. Lastly, if you're not comfortable in using these cutters, you can ask the help of someone who knows how to use them. Or maybe you can go back to our old trusty pair of scissors. However, there are some materials, like this thick cardboard, which is difficult to cut with scissors, but it can still be done. So it's your decision which tool you want to use for cutting. Okay, thanks for watching.